Welcome back. Our tweet of the night, provided by ESPN. 29 years ago today, Mario Lemieux returned to hockey and scored his 40th goal of the season after a 6-week treatment for Hodgkin's lymphoma. And it's one of the few times you will see a standing ovation by Flyer fans to anyone in a Pittsburgh uniform, but well-deserved. And I remember all of that, Chris, and I certainly remember when Mario had back surgery and you know, he had people in the locker room had to lace up his skates because he couldn't. It was amazing to me, if healthy, just what he could have done in terms of record books, because he missed essentially, 4.5 to 5 years based on how you look at it. For me, he was the most talented player I've seen, and it doesn't matter who else you talk about. I'm always going to say that, all due respect to guys like Crosby, who's different and tremendous in his own right, but I haven't seen anyone like Mario Lemieux.
If Mario Lemieux's healthy, there's no debate about who's the greatest hockey player ever. Even if he doesn't get to Gretzky's point totals, because the 80s, the first part of the 80s when Gretzky got to do his thing, were just a completely different animal scoring-wise. He gets close enough that everyone goes, oh yeah, that guy's the best that ever played. He's definitely the most talented player who ever laced him up or had other people lace them up for him. I always wonder, no one's ever said that those stories are anything but completely true. The lacing up of the skates with the back problems specifically. Mm-hmm. It's just wild to think that that actually was going on, and then the guy goes out and plays hockey. Sometimes I sit there and think about that, and then I have like a little twinge in my back, and I go, yeah, get up off the couch, because if that guy can do it, then the average everyday guy can probably get up off the couch and go to the kitchen and not ask for a glass of water.
Yeah,
it's just wild to me.
It was amazing how, and even when he came back, he was out in L.A. under an assumed name after, he was trying to rehab his back, and the Penguins were in a race to the playoffs to try to get in. They had to win, I think it was Buffalo, the final game of the regular season, and he flew in, and I believe he was the number one star, if not one of the top 3 stars, had a goal and an assist, and they lost in overtime when Uwe Krupp, one of my favorite names in hockey, got a goal to win it for the Sabres. But just to do that is remarkable. Anyway, speaking of hockey, Penguins begin 7 in a row against playoff teams. What are you going to learn about this team in the next 7 games?
I think especially in the next 3, because it's all Eastern Conference opponents, and one of them stuck in the middle there is obviously the Hurricanes. You do the Florida swing with the Hurricanes sandwiched in the middle. I think that's where you learn. I like that it's this late into the season, relatively speaking. I think it's also good that it's before the trade deadline that you're playing all these playoff teams in a row, Bob, because that's going to be clarifying for Ron Hextall, don't you think, more than anything else?
Sure.
I mean, we know obviously that they're probably locked into that 2-3 matchup with the Rangers in the first round. That feels predestined at this point. But I think what's really useful here, wins and losses, believe me. I mean, if they win and they look impressive in these next 3 games especially, I'm going to feel really good about them. But I do think it's instructive for the general manager, hey, against teams that we're going to have to go through in either likely cases or definite cases to get to where we want to go, where do we have deficiencies? How do we measure up? Is there somebody out there that can help us in a very specific way? So I actually like the timing of it on a lot of levels for the Penguins, tactically and in terms of long-range roster building and planning.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I think it's going to be important to see how they react to this. They also have, after those 3 games you mentioned, you got Vegas coming into town, and then they have Nashville and the St. Louis Blues, who tonight played in Madison Square Garden. They took a 3-2 lead into the third period, but New York came back and won it 5-3. Game winner by Chris Kreider. Boys, he turned out to be quite a goal scorer this year for them. Let's go to the lines, beginning with Stan in McCandless. Stan, thank you for joining. Chris Mueller and myself, what's going on?
Hi, guys. How you doing this evening? And I just wanted to touch on what you guys were just talking about. That's what the nature of my call was about. The Penguins' run in playoff, making the playoffs for the last several years has just been unparalleled. It's just been amazing how they've been, able to go to the big dance for the last several years. And, of course, there's no threat of them even missing the playoffs this year. Now they're just jockeying for position. Looks like they're going to play the Rangers. But, again, whether they end up in second or third place, I don't think really matters, because to me, over the years, just watching the playoffs, home ice advantage really means little, or if anything.
Maybe.
So
but
it's just
Stan,
how you're playing. It's just how you're playing.
But I'd still think that you'd rather have it than not have it, just because. And you can throw examples of me all the time. When I saw Montreal beat them in a Game 7 here in Pittsburgh at the old barn there, Chris, and they ran into one of the hottest goaltenders. I get that. But I think just to get to a Stanley Cup final this year would be an unbelievable task, considering all the good teams in the East. You'll probably have to go through, if it's the Rangers, fine. Then it's going to be Carolina. Then it's going to be one of those teams like Tampa or Florida. Those are 3 unbelievably difficult series to get through.
Yeah, it's murderer's row this year. That's why I also think it's going to be tough for Tampa to three-peat, even though they're still pretty loaded, because they're just so exhausted, you would imagine, even after that abbreviated run to a cup that's that stop-and-start one. It's going to be tough. It's going to be goaltending oriented, and it's going to be the stars for the Penguins who are going to be the determining factor. As for home ice advantage, though, it really doesn't matter. How many cups have they closed out on home ice?
I know.
This many.
I know, but I think, generally speaking, if you can get it, why wouldn't you want it? You know, I mean, it makes more sense to me. If I'm going to go into this
hockey,
knowing,
well, I would say this, Bob, about hockey specifically because of the nature of the sport and how low scoring it is, you know, obviously compared to basketball or whatever. I think coaches might tell you in some cases that they like the idea mentality-wise that their team might have that road mentality, play a little more conservative, be a little bit more locked down. I'm just playing maybe a little bit of devil's advocate here, but I think the way the game is coached, there are some coaches, especially of high-flying, turnover-prone teams, who wouldn't mind if their team was a little more buttoned up.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to Al in Etna, who joins us right now on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
Hey, Bobby,
What's
how
up,
you
Al?
doing?
Good, Al, thanks.
Hey, Bob. Hey, Chris, how you doing? I like your shirt, Chris. Bob,
Thank you, Al.
When's baseball going to start up again?
You know, you could place a bet if you want to call one of the FanDuel, for example. Any of those sites, they're taking bids on when it may start. My guess, if you're asking me, and you asked the question now, so I don't know what you think, Chris. I think it's going to be at the beginning of May.
Well, I mean, we get a lot. I'm sure you get these too, Bob, but we get promotional emails from sports betting, book houses, places that are putting odds out, right? And they want us to talk about the odds that they give us. And so they gave us today. It was May was the 7-2 favorite. April was 11-2, and all these months are stacked so close together that it's a coin flip almost. You're getting pretty good odds with anything. The sad part was that no season was in there. Season gets wiped out was at 5-1. They think it is more likely from an odds perspective that the season is completely wiped out than it starts in April. So think about that.
Yeah,
I think it'll probably start in May and maybe mid-May, maybe not at the start of May. The damage is already done here, though. I really think it is. The damage is done. The sport has already been marginalized in terms of audience. People are wise to the fact that this is the creation of the owners. I think people felt snake bit and hurt by the strike because it always hurts more when it's the players doing it in '94. Mm-hmm. But people know what the owners are up to now. People know that they have a clown car for a commissioner in Rob Manfred, just a complete joke, who's laughing when he's talking about canceling series to start the season off. So this is going to do, I think, irreparable harm to a sport that can't afford any more of it.
And we'll see who blinks first in this situation. But if I'm the players, they normally are pretty strong about this. And owners,
good.
And they should be. They very much should be. But we'll see. It's going to be interesting how it plays out. But quite frankly, the interest level is very low right now. We're due for a break. I have a lot of people want to talk. We'll try to get to as many calls as we can when we continue right here live on Pittsburgh CW and 93.7 The Fan. Don't go away.